Welcome to Unjaded. This is your straight talk, shoot from the hip, wrapped in a little bit of love, human design for business podcast. We talk a lot here about clarifying your message so that you can bring in paying clients with ease. And ease is different from easy. Stick around to find out how we roll here. I'm your host, Vickie Dickson. I am a 2-4 emotional manifesting generator, light on the emotional, and I'm a quad right in human design. In real speak, I am an entrepreneur of 30 plus years. I've had every kind of business there is, and I always say that business is my love language. I can't wait to dive in with you here on the podcast. Okay, welcome to Unjaded. My guest here today is Adam Schaeuble, and he is the host of the Podcasting Business School. He is a genius in the podcasting world. If you're thinking of starting a podcast, you got to get into his world. And we're going to be talking a little bit about his human design and about how he does things over at Podcasting Business School. So welcome, Adam.
Vickie, I'm so excited. And I'm most excited that you pronounce my last name flawlessly. There's a lot of vowels in there for all your audience that's listening in. And so it's always much appreciated when somebody just nails it. I was like, she didn't ask, how's this going to go? It could be, anything could happen, but no, that's much appreciated. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to kind of mesh my story and hopefully I can add some value to your audience, but also your application of your expertise. I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, so I'm going to go back to when we almost met and when we almost met the second time, because I think it's kind of a fun thing of how I came into your world. So go back to podcast 2024, January 2024 was Podfest, sorry.
Yep.
And it was in Florida and my girlfriend and I had traveled there. And I was standing in front of you at the lineup for the hotel. You were checking in. And I'm a small town Canadian girl, right? I'm going to turn around and say, oh, so do you have a podcast? And then all of a sudden these girls start, Adam. And they're like flocking to you. And I'm like, who is this person who's standing behind me? I didn't know you were kind of a big deal. And then the second time, so Podfest started, I think, it doesn't matter what day of the week. Podfest started day one. And my girlfriend, Lorianne, and I were going through it. And it was like kind of okay. And then I went to your workshop. And I came out of that workshop and I said, my God, Lorianne, he saved Podfest for me.
Wow.
Because you were just so dynamic and the information that you were providing was so hands-on and stuff that I could use for my own podcast.
Wow. I appreciate you saying that. I work hard at what I do. And one of the things I love to do is add energy, especially on a live stage, and just kind of pour as much as I can into the audience. So yeah, I wish you had said hello the first time, because we could have jammed out and become pod pals immediately. But no, I'm glad that in a roundabout way we eventually got connected.
Yeah. So it's interesting to hear you say that you love to energize things because that's so much of your design, right? I have this thing that I do where I'm always guessing people's design, especially people that I have interactions with in a business sense. And manifesting generator. So Adam is a manifesting generator. So Energizer Bunny of all Energizer Bunnies, able to do lots of different things. And you do lots of different things, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm just nodding my head here like, yes.
Yeah.
Is inside my head completely now.
Yeah. And then the 4-6 profile. So profile in human design is the role that you play in the movie of your life. It's who you're here to be. And that fourth line profile, I knew you were a fourth line profile because you have built community around you and you teach others how to build community through their podcast, which is really a neat thing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. That's when people get into podcasting, there's kind of different motivators, and they may hear their favorite show and they're like, I want to be just like insert famous podcaster name here, Gretchen Rubin, Joe Rogan, whatever. Yeah. And they see all these ads and you're like, man, I bet they're making so much money and I can do that too. And so there's that kind of vibe that people are like, oh, that's what I want to create. Then we realize it's really, really hard to do that. And we also realize, oh, I'm not famous, so this is gonna be even harder to do. Mm-hmm. But when I eventually stumbled upon I'm good at just adding value, making friends, stirring up energy in a group of people, and kind of taking a leadership role, eventually getting to an expert role after I have enough experience in what it is I'm doing. That was so important to have that aha moment, because then I can teach other people and go, listen, you can be the people's champion. You don't have to be the famous person. You can find a niche, just like what you're doing with your brand here, Vickie. And it's just like, you can be the boots on the ground person in the trenches, leading by example. And you're that person that's 5 steps down the path ahead of your ideal audience member. And you build community around that and go, hey, it's not me doing this and you doing this. It's us doing this. And let's do this together. And that's how I built my weight loss brand. That's how I built my fitness facility when I had that. And then that's how I built my whole business brand, podcasting business school. So yeah, community is everything to me. And like whether I get to talk to somebody that's one-on-one like this or one to many, like a live event, you're going to get the exact same energy from me no matter what. Like it's 100% focus. It's 100% add value. And that's the way I've always been. So, and I'm sure that you're like doing the mind reading thing right now going, yes, this makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it's so fourth line. So if you're listening in and you have a fourth line in your profile, it's all about your community. Everything is all about, and your opportunities are going to come from your networks and your community. I have an unconscious fourth line, so I'm a 2-4. And yeah, we just move through life creating community around us. And for me, it's unconscious, so I don't even realize I'm doing it. But for you, I feel like it's front and center. Like, it's the thing that drives you.
It's on purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. And then your 6-line profile just was interesting when you were talking. I'm like, okay, so you're here to be a role model. Eventually, you'll be a role model after you're 50. But in the meantime, you learn through experience and you take these experiences and you integrate all of your lessons and then you bring them to your people and say, okay, so here's how we do it. And you totally do that.
Yeah.
That's your MO.
Yeah. You look at the history of my episodes in podcasting business school. We released episode 487 this week.
Wow.
So that's week after week after week for many, many years now. And the initial like 100 episodes, especially, there was some like imposter syndrome going on there. I was a little nervous about launching a podcast about podcasting because I hadn't really seen that much success yet, but it was kind of like, I'm going to try a lot of stuff. I'm going to document it through this show, and I'll let you know what works, what doesn't work, and we're going to figure this out together. And then years down the road, after many epic fails and reverse engineering what actually I should have done and fixing it, and then it does work, now I can just teach from that expert positioning and going, oh, I got this. You or me 5 years ago, I got this, change this and that, you're going to be fine. But it didn't start that way. I think that's the gap that's hard for people to jump across sometimes or travel through, really. There's no jumping across it. You have to travel through it and gain that experience. And they're trying to be and position themselves like, I already know everything about podcasting. I've got 12 episodes of my show. And it's just not like that. So I'm not a big on the fake it till you make it. I'm like, be real and take people with you on the journey. If you mess up, broadcast it and be that real person. Everybody goes, oh my God, so relatable. I messed that up too. And he's figuring out how to fix it. So that's kind of the way I prefer to operate. And yeah, like eventually becoming that expert. But at first it's just somebody that's in there, and like I say, in the trenches.
Yeah. Are you embarrassed by the first episodes that you did?
I mean, I secretly enjoy making fun of myself, and I'm okay with it. It's a part of my personality. I like to make people laugh and smile, and an easy way to do that is to tell them to go listen to my first episodes. And one of my favorite stories to tell, this was my health podcast, is, I mean, I'm just figuring it out. I had no idea how to do anything. But it was less than 20 episodes. I got my first email from a listener. I had my first fan, and the title of the email was "Love Your Show, but ... But I didn't care. I was like, somebody loves my show. This is the first time I've heard from somebody. I'm on the brink of being famous now. So I open it. And what I had done was I started adding a sound effect to the end of the episodes. It was an exercise based episode. So I found this sound that sounded like somebody dropping a barbell, like you lift it and drop it, like it clanks on the ground. But I didn't understand sound leveling, like volume leveling. So that sound, like my audio is kind of going mid-range, and that sound is like 10x. So this person was like, love your show, but can you take the shotgun effect off the back of the episode? I almost wrecked my car. Like they literally drove up onto the curb of the street because it scared them so bad. And like blew out their eardrums. And so I almost killed my first super fan. So that was my story. I like to tell especially beginning level podcasters. But yeah, I have no problem people going back and listening. Just, it is a real documentation of my evolution, not only as a podcaster, but as somebody learning how to do online business, which a lot of people are doing, and they pay a lot of money to learn how to do. But when I started this show, I had 0 subscribers, 0 followers on Instagram, 0 email list, zeros across the board. And we've built up into something pretty special and unique.
And I think that's something that people forget when they come into the online business space. They forget that we all start at 0. Like I've had so many people say to me, but you don't understand. I don't have any Instagram followers. I'm like, neither did I. Like we all start at zero. And you have shown us, or you continue to show us boots on the ground. Okay, this is what I'm learning. This is what I'm learning. This is what I'm learning. It's a beautiful way to use your design. It's how you're built to show us, but it's just interesting to see it in action.
Well, I appreciate you noticing that. That's something that I really enjoy doing. And I'm very purposeful with that technique because I feel like there's lots of famous, fancy people out there that leverage their name and their following. And maybe they're being truthful about their numbers and their downloads, and maybe they're not. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, I can stand out by just being the most real person and relatable. So I'm going to be my unique, weird self. And if people like me, you're going to like me.
People fangirl over you at Podfest.
Yeah, Podfest. I got them coming in at Podfest. That's true.
So this is your second podcast, correct? You had one before.
Yep. I had my health show. Yep. And then this is the transition. Yep.
So how many years total have you been podcasting?
Since 2015. So the Million Pound Mission podcast, I sold my gym in 2019. I sold the health podcast and the health brand in 2021. And that's gone on. Like Nate Palmer took that show over and he's over 1.5 million downloads now. So I was really excited that he's continued to see success with that and that brand and the base that we built with the listenership and everything. And yeah, we made the transition full-time in 2019, I went online full-time, online business, full-time podcaster.
Good timing.
And, yeah. And got rid of the gym right before the pandemic really got cooking. I don't know if that was part of my human design or not, but I'd called it good luck. I was like, I was due for some good luck on that deal. It was scary because I decided to go full-time online, totally new space, the zeros across the board. Pandemic hits. I was like, uh-oh, this is going to make it even more tricky. But yeah, I'm one of those people that I don't quit easy on things, especially when my why is so big. And it's just like, I've got the ability to make my why bigger than all the why nots. And like that, I look at them like Lego brick stacks. I'm like, as long as I got one brick higher on the why, because all the why nots happen all at once. We know this. Pandemic, health issue, kids getting busy with all the sports, like all the excuses, all the things will pile up. And whether you're trying to reach a financial goal, business goal, relationship goal, health, weight loss goal, if you're one stack higher on the why side, then you're going to keep going. I just make sure that happens.
That's amazing advice. I find too that the more disciplined you are in one area of your life, at least that's how it is for me. The more disciplined I am in one area of my life, the easier it is to find discipline in other areas of my life. But if it's all off the rails, it's all off the rails. There's never just one area that I'm okay here and the rest of me is a mess. It's like I'm either a mess or I'm on track.
I feel you on that. Yep.
And you just recently celebrated 500,000 downloads on your own podcast, on this podcast.
Yes.
So congrats.
So very, very proud of that. Very excited about that. And, in certain circles, people are like, that is amazing. And other people are like, oh, I thought you'd be more than that because they hear like Joe Rogan numbers and that's the reference point. But 500,000 downloads, that's the second show I've taken past 500,000 downloads. So I'm over 1 million downloads in my podcasting career. And that is crazy to me because the first several years were a real long road. There was a lot of crickets, a lot of, wow, there were 12 people listening to my show. And then there was like 20 people and then it went back down to 15. I'm like, I lost 25% of my listenership. What happened? And eventually, we got traction. But no, I love open transparency and sharing my numbers openly, like on my Instagram and things like that, because there's a lot of lying and fibbing on podcast numbers and people aren't truthful. And a lot of people beat themselves up because like, oh, my friend said they did 1 million downloads an episode and I'm only doing 45. What's wrong with me? And they'll quit, but their friend is only doing 45 downloads also. And I want more podcasters to start sharing real numbers and so I'm kind of trying to lead by example. So I'll just screenshot live video onto my Libsyn account. I'm like, there it is. There's my number right there. This is the real number, whether you're impressed by that or not, whether you're inspired by that or not. That's really what I've achieved. And hopefully that gets some more people sharing the real numbers. I think that's going to be a good thing.
And I think that attitude is everywhere. Like we look at people on Instagram who have a bazillion followers and I have to keep saying with my clients, it doesn't mean money. It doesn't mean money in the bank. And that's the thing about podcasts, Instagram, Facebook. It doesn't matter where you are, whoever you're watching, you have to look at what's real and what's smoke and mirrors.
I agree.
And I do think people have crazy expectations of podcasting, crazy expectations. Like So people come into podcasting and they think, like you said, they're going to have all of these downloads, and then they get really discouraged. And then we experience what you would call pod fade, where we just kind of fade out into nothing,
Yeah.
maybe do 7 or 8 episodes. And then it's just like, you just stop, but you can't stop. As long as you keep going, you're still winning, right?
Yeah. That's my secret. When I crossed 500,000 downloads for the second show, I did an Instagram video and I was like, listen, I've got different techniques and different things that I teach and download growth stuff. But the main hack or technique was I just didn't quit. Like I just kept tweaking and pivoting and micro tweaks and pivots here and there and rename, rebrand, new offer, new name. It's what a lot of fails, some successes, hang on to those and just keep going and going and going. I eventually figured it out. But yeah, there's the latest stat that I've heard, there's been over 4 million podcasts that have been launched, but less than 10% of those are what we would consider active, which they define active as anything with more than 10 episodes total and anything that's been released in the last 90 days. So those two factors. And that to me is sad, but also motivating because there's, I promote that because I'm like, hey, we just have to keep going. Like you said, there's a lot of opportunity because look at that amount of active YouTube channels and blogs, and it's like in the millions of active. So we're in like 400,000 ish, really
At best, yeah.
active podcasts, less than 500,000 for sure. There's still fertile ground there to plant our flag and be like, this is my niche and I'm going to show up and I'm going to show up consistently. I will figure this out. There's opportunity there. But like you said, we got to keep it going. Like we got to just keep, when I help people launch or I'm consulting on a launch, I'm like, 52 is the number. You don't get to quit. You don't even get to think about quitting until you give me 52 episodes, 1 per week for a year. Because it's going to take you a year to learn how to be a podcaster. You're going to screw up a lot. You're going to talk to the wrong people. You're going to figure out who actually is listening, who you actually want to talk to. You're going to find your voice. You're going to get much better at producing content and the whole process of everything, consistency. You're going to get some routines in place, but it's going to take you a year. You need to give yourself that amount of grace and that buffer to figure it out. You're doing something that you've never done before. You're not a professional marketer in the most cases. I'm like 52. That's the rule. And then, we can talk about quitting if we need to, but most people don't at that point.
At that point, yeah. And it's a great asset in your business. Like my podcast is my most favorite thing. And I think I learned a lot from you. I had already started mine I just started mine, I guess, when I came into your world. And I learned so much about all of the different tweaks and how to read my analytics and all of those things and how not everybody is having 1 million downloads. Like that's so key because we think that everybody's doing these major things and probably they're not.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who's going to start a podcast? What's 3 things you would tell someone who's going to start a podcast?
Well, I mean, the first thing you got to know the why behind it. Like, why are you doing this? And if the why is, I want to link up with my bros and drink some brews and talk about some stuff and get some underwear sponsors, get these mattress company money come my way, you're not going to succeed. Like, it needs to be better than that. So are you doing this to gain exposure for an existing brand? Great idea. Great why. Are you doing this to create and start a new online brand or business? Great why behind that. Are you doing this to acquire an audience or potential clients for a service that you provide? Great why. Like those are the things that I'm looking for. And you can get sponsors, you can monetize in different ways. But if you're like, I just want to make $1 million a year and this is the thing that I'm going to try, that we need to go a little bit deeper and go, all right, what's the actual why behind this? And then we look at, all right, our topic. Who are we going to try to impact here? What's that ideal listener avatar? And then because you and I've had a lot of conversations about like getting our keywords with our name, our podcast name, and all this stuff is really, really important. And dialing all that in as you launch, that's a really big deal. So the why behind the show, understanding who you're trying to impact, and then using that to really develop your keyword strategy, the SEO stuff for your podcast launch efficiency. And then I'm going to challenge people. I'll come back to that 52 episode challenge. So when I'm working with somebody on a launch, I'll actually send them a spreadsheet. We'll go and I'll have a conversation of like, okay, what kind of episodes are we going to do? Are we doing solo episodes? Are we doing interviews? Are we doing coaching style episodes? Mix of the 3, panel style episodes. Those are kind of the 4 different types of episodes, and we break them down and we go, okay, let's say you're going to do half of the 52 episodes. Every other week is going to be a solo. So that's 26 solo episodes. And I'll sit there and go, okay, what are your topics? Let's just brainstorm real quick, 26 topics. And people are like, wow, that's a lot, but it usually takes them 10 minutes. And they're like, I'm like, so for you, if we were sitting down here, I'd be like, all right, human design. If you're going to develop an audio course on human design, what are the 26 bullet points? And you're just going to go bing, 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 bing. We're good to go. Mm-hmm. And those are their solo episodes. Then I'll go, all right, maybe we want to do 20 guest episodes. Let's go on the Apple top rankings charts and let's look at some other podcasters in your space. Let's see who you might want to invite on for a guest spot on your show. Let's fill out those. And then we've got, 10 or 12 coaching style episodes or panel episodes. And we're going to, work on those as we go. So we map that out before we launch, because what we don't want to do is launch a show and go, all right, now you're chasing that weekly content and behind like, oh, I told my audience I'd put something out every Wednesday and it's Tuesday night. I got to find somebody to interview real quick. That's not going to be a successful strategy. You want to have things mapped out in advance. Those solo episodes are like break glass in case of emergency. You can always put out a solo episode and, get that out, get that content out there. And, if I can add a fourth thing, it would just be like really shoot for weekly content, because that's part of the superpower of being a podcaster, because you can insert your content into the life routines of your listeners. So people are going to listen to this episode. They're, walking their dog, they're working out, they're cooking dinner, they're driving their children somewhere. They're, like it's a part of that routine. So you might listen to this show on Thursday mornings when you go for your morning walk. And that's a part of the routine. And we don't want to lose that by releasing inconsistent content, or even like once a month or every other week. It's better than nothing, but if I get that real estate of that weekly, like I'm in their earbuds every week when they walk on Thursday, I don't want to give that up. So I'm going to put something out there.
So in the human design space, there are non-energy types and energy types. You and I are both manifesting generators. So both energy types, kind of energy on steroids, I think is what we have. Nice. Yeah. But there are non-energy types as well. So when I'm working with them, sometimes we talk about doing like a mini series of podcast episodes. Thoughts on that? If you don't have the energy to consistently go week to week to week, if you did a mini series every quarter or something like that, still better than nothing? Or what would you say about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's different strategies around that. Like I've got what I call a limited series podcast. It's 21 episodes. Yeah. 21 episodes on one topic. Yeah. So you can go that route. If you guys want to check that out as an example, it's called Podcast Monetization Tips for Online Coaches, Consultants, and Service Providers. So if that's you, then that's a good resource. But basically, I created a 21 episode audio course where I just jam out on all the different ways that coaches, consultants, and service providers can get more clients via a podcast. And so that's one option. Is you could launch these little silos of limited series podcasts and it's its own individual thing. And I kind of transformed it. And I teach people how to use that as a funnel, so that now you've got all these audio funnels everywhere. And when I spoke at PodFest, one of the things I did is like, hey, if you're a coach, consultant, or service provider, and you want to get more clients from your podcast, insert slide, go get this show right here and listen to it on your flight home. And a lot of people did, and a lot of people ended up signing up for my stuff. Yeah. So great resource. And that, so that's one idea, but doing like little series of a quarterly podcast series and a regular show, that's also a great strategy. And I think just communicating to your audience what the schedule is going to be and sticking to that and going, listen, you can count on the first month of every quarter, a new series is going to pop up, and like just really being consistent with that. And are you missing out in the weekly thing? Yeah, but you can still capture an audience. I think consistency overall is a really important thing. It's not just like whenever I feels like it, I'm going to put something out there, because then it's going to be really, it's not going to work. Like if you can consistently show up for them, they'll consistently show up for you. One of my favorite podcasts is called Hardcore History. Dan Carlin. Dan Carlin. And he puts out these massive, like 8-10 hour long episodes. And it just kind of like however long it takes him to do it. There's these deep dives on like Genghis Khan and all these different cool historical characters. And he just puts them out whenever he wants. But he's got a massive following, and people kind of understand that it just takes him a long time they're very intricate. So that works for him. But for most people, I think you got to be like, all right, first month of the quarter or a certain cadence. If you can do that, I think it can still work.
Yeah, because I think the downfall of thinking, whenever I feel like it is that you're never going to feel like it.
Yeah,
It's just never going to happen if you
this
have
is
to say
true.
when you feel like it. If you're doing weekly episodes or something. So in one of my very first episodes, I just basically said, look, I'm a manifesting generator. I'm kind of crazy. And I can promise you that I'll be here every Monday morning. And I don't know beyond that what's going to happen. And so I do release series of stuff, but it is when I'm running a challenge or something like that. So I think if we're going to give extra, that's okay. But if we're going to take away something that we've counted on or they've counted on us for, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So like if you're like, I'll be here 3 episodes a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then the third week you're like, just kidding, I'm going to release it on
Yeah,
Thursday once a week. It's like you're kind of jerking your audience around a little bit. And there's a real thing like that. No, like, and trust
it's
is a
real.
thing. And you build, I can say I've released episodes twice a week for like years on Tuesdays and Fridays, and
Hmm.
and people can count on that, and they know that they can show up and get some good stuff from Adam.
So you talked about having a plan of episodes, 26 episodes going in, because you basically want people to understand like, okay, this is what I can do. And so that we don't get stuck in that place of like, oh shit, what am I going to do this week? And I feel like a fly on the wall sometimes with your episodes. And I'm like, oh, he's totally in response to something. He totally responded to something that was happening and delivered the goods.
Yeah.
Correct?
Oh yeah. I mean, my best stuff is either stuff that I'm personally working on or dealing with, my
Hmm.
experiments, as I call them, or something that I've just talked to somebody on a DM or a coaching session, or if I'm doing podcast audits and a few people in a row, it's like same thing keeps coming up. I'm like, I got to cover this better on an episode. So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of times it's just, again, me being in the trenches, talking to real life podcasters going, what are you struggling with right now? Like when somebody new DMs me on Instagram or emails me, I answer all my DMs myself. I answer all my emails myself. Like that's a point that I make with people. Like you're talking to me, not AI
Hmm.
Adam or virtual assistant pretending to be me. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not my jam. But when you do that, people are, they like, oh, I love your show. And, usually ask a question. I'll answer whatever the question they ask. And then I'll go, hey, how did you find out about me? What were you looking for? And then I'll go, what episode do you need to hear from me? Like what?
Mm.
And I may already have it. And if I do, I'll send them that link and go, hey, I've already done 3 episodes on this. Here are the links. Go check them out. But a lot of times I'm like, I've never covered that before. And I'll boom, let's go. I had somebody one time that was like, I'd done a podcast audit with them and they'd kind of been loosely in my world a little bit in my ecosystem. And she reached out and she's like, I'm thinking about quitting. Have you ever done an episode just on like motivation for podcasters that are thinking about quitting? I was like, beautiful.
Coming right up.
Thank you for the suggestion. And I busted it out that next week. And we saved her. We saved another podcast. She kept going. So
Yay.
yeah, so stuff like that I love. And because I'm doing the show, and for people who are doing a podcast or thinking about doing a podcast, if it can be audience centric and like you're creating and curating the show for your ideal listener, and it's not about your ego and it's not about, it can be about monetizing and things like that, but that's kind of the after effect of you serve and serve and serve and deliver. And you're like, you are their person and you're there for them. You're kind of leveled up. And when the timing is right, when it makes sense for them, then the monetization will happen.
And I feel like that's a different thing for us as podcasters because like we're in people's ears. It's not like if they're watching a video and they're doing 6,000 other things. Like my people are usually walking or driving and I'm in their ears and I'm having a
Yeah.
conversation with them, even though it's kind of one way. Aren't you always just in your head kind of picturing like, oh, and I'm talking with my hands and I'm like, oh yeah, they can't see me talk with my hands. I feel like
Yeah.
my people are with me as
Yeah. It's
I'm,
intimate. Like
yeah,
we are inside of their head, literally.
yeah,
right there. And
like it or not
yeah.
for them.
And it's weird. It's weird for me still, but I've been around long enough that I've had a decent amount of people listen. And sometimes people will pop on a Zoom chat or maybe they join something I'm doing. I do an onboarding session and they're like, it's weird to like be talking to you because all I hear is your voice in my head all the time. I'm like, it's weird for you to say that too. Cause it's like, we don't realize as podcasters, like we influence people and like, that's a real thing. And that's still strange for me, I guess.
Yeah. When people fan all over you at Podfest and you're like, what?
Yeah. I paid those people to do that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I did actually think about doing that once. I was like, I thought that'd be a hilarious Instagram video. If I had it all mapped out too, Vic. I was like, I'm going to step out of the elevator and have somebody like filming in the background and I'll have like 30 people like in on it and they just go crazy. And they're like, begging for autographs. Will you sign my face and like all this stuff? But I haven't gone through on that. So maybe next year,
Next Podfest. Yeah.
You can be like my secret stealth filmer or something.
Okay. Yeah. I'll be the filmer, not the front. Yeah. Yeah. I can totally see this coming up on Instagram because your reels have been super fun lately. You've been doing like the disguises and things.
AI. Yeah.
Oh, it's AI. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When I put my face on Ron Burgundy and like Ace Ventura and all that stuff. Yeah.
So that's fun. AI. Yep. So fun. A couple of things I just want to touch on here. I want to go back to. So one of the things is the way you talked about creating episodes in response. So this is for our listeners because people are always asking me, how do you create in response? How do you actually experience response as a manifesting generator or generator? And this is what Adam's talking about. He's talking about, oh my God, my people are all telling me the same thing. Like they're leading me. It's like you couldn't have an easier way to create content if you tried than when something happens to you as a manifesting generator or generator and you're like, that's it. And you create it in that moment, or at least you voice memo it to yourself or write it down or something. Yep. It's like, that's where you are magnetic. You do that too?
Oh, yeah.
Voice memo yourself? Yeah.
Well, I do Evernote. I've got an Evernote file called my idea bank, and it saves me, Vickie, because I have so many ideas and I'm in so many conversations, but I'll just note what the idea was. And then I go back and I review it every Thursday. I've got a reminder on my calendar to review my idea bank. That way I'm like, I'm not going to lose track of this. And then I just kind of pluck it off the tree when it's the right idea for the right time.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. So, final words for people. If they're thinking of starting a podcast, you would probably say do it.
Yeah. Stop podcrastinating. That's my word for it. There's a lot of people out there that I know you've got a show idea. You probably even thought about some episodes, guests, maybe co-host ideas. I knew one person, this is going to blow your mind. I knew a person that had recorded 42 episodes, hadn't released anything yet. And like, we're talking about like more than a year, like a year plus, 42 episodes, hasn't launched the show yet because they were still working on the art. Like,
oh my gosh.
Like, I don't feel good about the art yet. I was like, you've recorded hours and hours and hours of content. So podcasting is a little bit of a ready, fire, aim situation. Like you can optimize, get lost in all the optimization, but it's something that you just got to get it out there. And like I said, the first year you're going to learn how to do it. So kind of give yourself grace in that buffer zone and plug into my world. The whole reason my brand and my show exists is to help people hit the fast forward button and not make the mistakes that I made, because I made them all. And you can kind of use that as a reverse checklist of things to not do. And I'll guide you through it. So yeah, that's the main thing is you got to get it out there. Although it feels like everybody we know has launched a podcast, they're not doing it well. They're not doing it weekly. They're quitting too early. Mm-hmm. So like I said, there's a lot of fertile ground out there and a lot of opportunity in the space. So especially if you're a service provider, if you are wanting to acquire, build an audience, build real relationships with them, and eventually convert a certain percentage of them over into being paying clients, podcasting is just that magic element. It's everything in my business. It's the tip of the spear. It's the center of my ecosystem. And it's the way that I prefer to have people kind of come into my world, find me, and really start to learn what I do, how I do it. And they can kind of decide on their own if I'm their person once they decide to hire somebody.
And it's such a great asset to have. Like when you talked about earlier how, you'll send somebody a few episodes. I think that's something that people forget to do a lot of times is actually use those episodes again. Like it's not just that you released it last Monday and then it's out into the ethers and you never use it again. There are so many. I worked with a client today and sent her 3 episodes on the emotional system in human design because that's what she needed the most. So we can just keep using these in our businesses. And you do that amazingly. You put them in your email sequences. You've got these limited edition podcasts that people can come through your world. So I think it's an incredible asset, podcasting. It's easier than a lot of other things that we do in our businesses, I think.
Oh yeah. I've got friends that are YouTubers and like hours and hours. My friends was like, hey, I got a new 15-minute video. It took him 6 hours to edit it and add all the extra bells and whistles. I'm like, no, thanks. I just did a 15-minute episode in my show. And guess how long it took me? 15 minutes. Good to go.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And you can do it in your pajamas, drinking your coffee, no matter what. Yeah. Exactly. It's amazing. Yeah. Okay. So where can people find you? And you do want to find Adam. If you're thinking at all about running a podcast, you really want to get into his world because It's like your stuff is so real and so usable for real people that, I want people to find you.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. My show is Podcasting Business School. Any podcast player, search it up. Go get it. You can even just search podcasting tips and it'll show up. If you want to look at my limited series, that's podcast monetization tips. That's another good resource. Website is podcastingbusiness.school. And then I'm Podcasting Business School on Instagram. And you can try to find me on LinkedIn, but I only check it like every 15 years. So I get a lot of guilt trips messages when I see people at events. They're like, man, I thought you answered all your own messages and I messaged you. I go, where did you message me? They're like, LinkedIn. I was like, I haven't been on LinkedIn since 1994, buddy. Like, I don't even know how to log in. So message me on Instagram, email me, and I will respond myself for sure. And I'd love to connect. And I appreciate you inviting me on the show. It's always an honor to share a platform. And I know it's a big deal to kind of share some of this audio space together. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you go leave that 5-star rating and review and mention that this was your favorite one, because that feeds my ego.
Well, thank you very much for saying yes when I asked. I think it was amazing to have you here. You're fun to hang out with.
All right. Much appreciated, Vickie.